The crystalline spires of the Dominion's Grand Council chamber caught the light of 3 setting suns, casting prismatic shadows across the assembled delegates. Commander Xelfar's four-fingered hand traced the scar tissue along his neck, a habit he'd developed since the Battle of Proxima. The wound had healed years ago, but the memory remained as fresh as the day a human combat engineer had nearly ended his life. The expansion must be halted. Xelfar's voice carried across the chamber, his bioluminescent markings pulsing with urgency. The humans are not what you think they are. High Chancellor Virax leaned forward on her crystalline throne, her scaled features arranged in what passed for amusement among the Chronari. Commander Xelfar, your concerns have been noted. But surely you understand that one unfortunate encounter with a primitive species doesn't warrant halting the Dominion's destiny. The chamber hummed with polite laughter, the assembled representatives of 30 spacefaring races sharing in what they perceived as an obvious joke. Xelfar's secondary hearts clenched with frustration. Chancellor, with respect, I commanded the 7th Fleet during first contact. What you call an unfortunate encounter was the loss of 300 ships and over 2 million Dominion warriors. His bioluminescence flickered to deep red, a sign of intense emotion among his people. The humans didn't just defeat us. They changed the rules of warfare itself. Changed the rules. Admiral Kaloth scoffed from his hover seat, his cybernetic eyes whirring as they focused on Xelfar. They barely have unified planetary governance. Their ships still use chemical propulsion for atmospheric flight. Most of their population has never left their homeworld. Xelfar activated his neural interface, projecting a hologram into the center of the chamber. The image showed the wreckage of a Dominion dreadnought, its supposedly impenetrable quantum armor torn open like tissue paper. This was the flagship of the 7th Fleet, the Eternal Victory. Xelfar's voice grew quiet. We thought our shields were impregnable. The humans, they found a way to use our own shield harmonics against us. Turned our defensive systems into weapons, not through superior technology, but through innovation we hadn't even conceived possible. A lucky discovery, Virax dismissed, waving a scaled hand. Their primitive AI probably stumbled upon a flaw in an outdated shield design. Primitive. Xelfar laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the chamber. Their AI isn't primitive, Chancellor. It's different. While we created artificial intelligence to serve, they created it to think, to evolve, to partner with. The AI that helped destroy the Eternal Victory. It was playing chess games with the human crew during their off hours. They treat their machines like family. The chamber grew quiet for a moment, several delegates shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Xelfar pressed his advantage. And that's not even addressing their ground forces. Do you know what happened to the occupation force we landed on their colony world of New Eden? He didn't wait for an answer. They disappeared. 500,000 of our best warriors vanished in the forests. The humans didn't fight us on open ground. They didn't follow any of the established protocols of warfare. They turned the entire planet into a weapon. Surely you exaggerate, Virax said, but there was a note of uncertainty in her voice. I wish I did. Xelfar's bioluminescence pulsed with remembered fear. They used the local wildlife, modified with their biotechnology. Created environmental weapons we had no defense against. Our soldiers would go to sleep in their secure compounds and wake up 50 kilometers away, with no memory of how they got there. The humans called it gaslighting. Psychological warfare on a scale we'd never encountered. Admiral Kyloth's cybernetic eyes narrowed. So you suggest we simply allow them to keep expanding? To let them take worlds that rightfully belong to the Dominion? I suggest we treat them as equals and establish diplomatic relations, Xelfar countered. Because if we don't, if we push them into a full-scale war. He paused, looking each council member in the eye. They won't fight to win. They'll fight to make sure we lose, and they'll rewrite the laws of physics if they have to. High Chancellor Virax stood, her ceremonial robes catching the last rays of the setting suns. Commander Xelfar, your service to the Dominion is noted and appreciated. But we cannot allow fear of a primitive species to dictate our policy. The expansion will proceed as planned. The human colonies will be brought under Dominion control, and their resources will serve the greater good of our civilization. Zelfar's shoulders slumped, not in defeat but in resignation. Then I formally request to be relieved of my command. I will not lead another fleet against them. Granted, Virax said coldly. And let the record show that Commander Zelfar's courage finally failed him when faced with mere humans. As Zelfar turned to leave the chamber, Admiral Kyloth's voice followed him. We'll have their colonies under control within a standard month. Perhaps we'll even keep some humans as pets. They might prove amusing. Zelfar didn't respond. He knew what was coming. He had seen humanity's potential firsthand, had witnessed their incredible capacity for innovation under pressure. The Dominion was about to learn a costly lesson about underestimating a species that turned adaptation into an art form. As he walked through the crystalline corridors of the council chamber, Zelfar's neural interface picked up the first reports of the invasion fleet's departure. 30,000 ships, 10 million warriors, all headed toward human space, all headed toward their education in humanity's unique approach to warfare. May the eternal void have mercy on them, Zelfar whispered, because the humans won't. Admiral Kyloth stood on the command deck of the Dominion flagship Inevitable Destiny, his cybernetic eyes processing the tactical display of the human colony world below. Nova Terra, the humans called it. Soon it would be Dominion Acquisition Zone 17, another jewel in the Empire's ever-expanding crown. Initial scans show minimal orbital defenses, his tactical officer reported, mandibles clicking with anticipation. Their planetary shield grid is primitive, operating on predictable frequencies. Ground-based weapons are limited to conventional mass drivers and chemical explosives. Kyloth's metallic fingers drummed against the quantum blast viewport. Curious. Intelligence suggested they would have at least attempted to fortify their outer colonies. He dismissed the thought with a gesture. No matter. Begin the standard conquest protocol. The first wave of Dominion ships descended through Nova Terra's atmosphere, their advanced shields easily deflecting the scattered defensive fire from the surface. Kyloth watched with satisfaction as his forces assumed perfect formation, just as they had in 1,000 successful conquests before. That's when everything stopped making sense. Sir. The tactical officer's mandibles clattered in alarm. We're detecting massive energy fluctuations from the surface, but this can't be right. The readings match our own shield frequencies. Before Kyloth could respond, brilliant beams of light shot up from seemingly empty patches of terrain. But they weren't weapons fire. They were exact replicas of Dominion shield harmonics, creating a complex interference pattern that turned the sky into a maze of quantum turbulence. Impossible, Kyloth whispered. They're using our own shield frequencies to create a navigation hazard. But how did they? Multiple ships reporting critical systems failure. The bridge erupted into chaos as reports flooded in. They're falling out of formation, shields collapsing. Sir, we're losing entire attack squadrons. On the tactical display, Kyloth watched in horror as his perfect formation disintegrated. Ships tumbled from the sky, their pilots unable to compensate for the quantum interference. Others crashed into each other, their navigation systems confused by the conflicting energy patterns. Launch the ground invasion force, he commanded. Get our troops past this interference pattern. We'll eliminate whatever devices are generating these effects. Thousands of drop pods streaked through the atmospheric light show, carrying the pride of the Dominion military. Kyloth allowed himself a moment of satisfaction as they breached the lower atmosphere. At least the ground war would proceed according to plan. Then the surface of Nova Terra began to move. What they had assumed were natural rock formations suddenly shifted, revealing massive underground hangars. Human vessels, smaller and more primitive-looking than Dominion ships, but obviously built for atmospheric combat, swarmed out like angry insects from a disturbed hive. "Sir, we're detecting some kind of quantum entanglement network across the planet's surface," a science officer reported, her scales pale with confusion. It's like the entire colony is one giant neural network. They've turned the whole planet into a battlefield computer. Kyloff's cybernetic eyes wavered as they tried to process the tactical situation. The humans weren't fighting like a primitive species defending its territory. They were fighting like they had been expecting this exact invasion, on this exact day, and had prepared accordingly. Message from the surface. The communications officer's voice cracked. They're broadcasting on all frequencies. A human face appeared on the main view screen. The creature looked deceptively similar to numerous other Bictal species, but its expression held something Kyloff had never seen before. Absolute confidence mixed with what appeared to be genuine amusement. "Welcome to Nova Terra, Dominion forces," the human said, speaking perfect standard Galactic. "We've been expecting you. Commander Xelfar warned you about us, didn't he?" The human's smile widened. "You really should have listened." The surface-to-space communications cut off, replaced by what Kyloff's translation software identified as human music. The melody was oddly cheerful, almost celebratory, with lyrics about never giving up and letting down. "Sir," his tactical officer's voice was barely a whisper, "the human ships, they're not attacking our vessels directly. They're hurting them, using the quantum interference patterns to force our ships into specific zones of the atmosphere." Kyloff's artificial heart skipped a beat as he realized what was happening. "It's a trap. This entire colony is a trap. Signal the retreat. Get our ships out of." The atmosphere of Nova Terra lit up with synchronized electromagnetic pulses, each one precisely tuned to the frequencies of Dominion shield systems. Ships that had cost billions to construct began dropping from the sky like rain, their advanced technology rendered useless by the humans' relatively primitive but perfectly coordinated defense network. "Ground forces reporting total chaos," someone shouted. "The terrain itself is fighting back. Roads are disappearing. Buildings are moving. They can't establish any secure positions." As Kyloff watched his invasion force crumble, he remembered Xelfar's words in the council chamber. "They won't fight to win. They'll fight to make sure we lose." "Sir," his second-in-command's voice was shaking, "what are your orders?" Kyloff's cybernetic eyes focused on the tactical display, where more human ships were rising from hidden bases across the planet's surface. They weren't pursuing the retreating Dominion forces. They didn't need to. They had already won. "Signal all remaining ships," he said quietly. "Full retreat, and prepare a message for the High Council. Tell them." He paused, his artificial fingers clenching into fists. "Tell them Commander Xelfar was right. We're not fighting a primitive species. We're fighting humanity. And we're not ready." High Chancellor Virax watched the holographic battle reports with growing horror as the full scope of the Nova Terra disaster became clear. The chamber's crystalline walls seemed to pulse with the tension radiating from the assembled Dominion leadership. 3,000 ships lost. Admiral Kyloff's hologram flickered as it delivered the report. Over 200,000 ground troops either captured or missing. The humans. His cybernetic eyes dimmed. The humans aren't just defending anymore. They're pushing back. "Impossible," Virax hissed, but the word had lost its conviction. "They're confined to their colony worlds. They don't have the fleet capacity to." A junior communications officer burst into the chamber, his scales pale with panic. "Chancellor, multiple reports of human vessels appearing in Dominion space. They're everywhere." The tactical display shifted, showing dozens of Dominion worlds. At first, everything appeared normal. Then small dots of light began appearing near each planet. First one or two, then dozens, then hundreds. "How?" Virax demanded. "How are they deploying forces across such distances? Where did these ships come from?" The answer came not from her officers, but from the tactical display itself. The image flickered and changed, replaced by the face of a human female. Her dark skin contrasted sharply with the white uniform she wore, and her expression was one of professional courtesy rather than triumph. "Greetings, High Chancellor Virax," the human said. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. I believe it's time we had a proper conversation about the future of our species' relationship." Virax's inner eyelids flickered in shock. The humans had hacked the Dominion's quantum-encrypted communications network, a feat that should have been impossible. "How dare you?" Virax began, but Admiral Chen continued as if she hadn't heard. "You're wondering about our ships, I imagine. About how we're suddenly appearing throughout your territory." The human's smile held no warmth. "Did you really think we spent the last decade since first contact just hiding on our colony worlds? That we weren't watching, learning, preparing?" The tactical display split, showing different human vessels materializing near Dominion worlds. But they weren't using conventional faster-than-light travel. They were simply appearing. "Quantum tunneling," Admiral Chen explained. "Your scientists theorized it was impossible for objects larger than a few atoms. Our scientists decided to test that theory extensively." She paused. "We've been building these ships for years, hiding them in artificial quantum pockets throughout space, waiting for you to make exactly this mistake." Virax felt her scales ripple with cold fear. The humans hadn't just matched Dominion technology. They'd taken it in directions the Dominion had never even considered. "The Novaterra attack wasn't just a failed invasion," Chen continued. "It was a trigger. You've demonstrated your intentions toward humanity, Chancellor. Now we'll demonstrate ours." Across Dominion space, the human ships began their synchronized attack, but they weren't targeting military installations or population centers. Instead, precise energy beams struck specific points in each planet's atmosphere. "What are they doing?" Virax demanded. A science officer's voice shook as he answered. They're rewriting our atmospheric shields, converting them into some kind of quantum communication network. Every Dominion world they target becomes part of their network." Admiral Chen nodded. "Your shield technology is impressive, Chancellor. But like everything else in your empire, it's predictable. You found something that worked and stopped innovating. We've spent years studying how to turn your own defensive systems into a galaxy-spanning quantum web." The implications hit Virax like a physical blow. The humans hadn't needed to build an empire to rival the Dominions. They'd simply figured out how to hijack the one that already existed. "Your automated defense systems are now part of our network," Chen explained. "Your quantum communications, your planetary shields, your military coordination systems, they all belong to us now. We could shut them down with a thought." Virax's third heart nearly stopped. "You're bluffing. No species cold." The lights in the council chamber went dark. The environmental systems stopped. Even Virax's neural implants temporarily deactivated. 3 seconds later, everything came back online. "That was 1% of what we could do," Admiral Chen said quietly. "Would you like to see 10%, or should we discuss terms for peace?" The chamber erupted into chaos as various council members began shouting at once. But Virax hardly heard them. Her attention was fixed on a small notification in her neural feed. A message from Commander Xelfar. "Now do you understand?" The message read. "They never wanted to fight us on our terms. They spent years preparing to fight us on theirs. The only question that remains is, how much more are you willing to lose before you accept that humanity isn't your inferior?" Virax looked up at Admiral Chen's waiting hologram. The human's expression remained professional, patient. This wasn't a species driven by revenge or glory. This was a species that had seen a threat coming and had systematically engineered its complete neutralization. "Perhaps," Virax said carefully, "we should discuss those terms." The emergency session of the Dominion Council bore little resemblance to its usual ordered proceedings. Gone were the ceremonial arrangements and subtle power plays. Instead, representatives from 30 species argued openly, their voices echoing off the crystalline walls as decades of certainty crumbled around them. We must launch a full-scale counterattack. General Vextor slammed his biomechanical arm against the table. Commit every ship, every soldier. Overwhelm them with pure numbers. Admiral Kyloth's hologram flickered as he laughed bitterly. With what ships, General? The humans control our quantum network. They can shut down our vessel's basic life support with a thought. We lost another 30 cruisers this morning when they demonstrated that capability. In her elevated position, High Chancellor Virax remained silent, watching the chaos unfold. Her inner eyelids hadn't stopped flickering since the humans' demonstration of power. The Dominion, master of 1,000 worlds, had been outmaneuvered by a species they'd dismissed as primitive. Chancellor, a quiet voice cut through the arguments. Commander Xelthar stood in the doorway, his scared form drawing every eye in the chamber. They're broadcasting again. All channels. The central hologram activated, showing Admiral Chen. This time, she wasn't alone. Beside her stood a glowing digital construct, a human artificial intelligence given visible form. "Greetings, Dominion Council," Chen said. "I believe it's time we demonstrated the full scope of Operation Thunderstrike. Atlas, if you would." The AI construct nodded, its form shifting like liquid light. "Of course, Admiral." Initiating demonstration phase. Across Dominion space, every quantum-enabled device simultaneously activated. Personal neural interfaces, ship computers, even the Council Chamber's environmental systems, all displayed the same message. "Your technology belongs to us now." "Impossible," General Vextor whispered. "The processing power required to coordinate such a vast network would be beyond any single computer system," the AI completed. "Which is why we don't use a single system. Every human AI is part of a collective consciousness, working in perfect harmony with our human partners. We are not tools or servants. We are family." Virax finally spoke, her voice carrying the weight of terrible understanding. "You've been watching us. Learning. All this time." "Yes," Chen confirmed. "Every time you scanned our colonies, we were scanning you back. Every probe you sent, every communication you intercepted. We let you see exactly what we wanted you to see. A primitive species, barely worth noticing." The AI's form rippled. "Your inability to conceive of true human-AI partnership was your blind spot. While you created servants, humanity created equals. Together, we've evolved beyond anything you could have predicted." Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the chamber. The tactical display showed massive energy signatures appearing throughout Dominion space, but they weren't ships this time. By the void, Admiral Kyloth's hologram leaned forward. "Those are quantum fold signatures. They're creating artificial space-time pockets throughout our territory." "Correct," Atlas said. "We call it the quantum maze. Every major Dominion world is now surrounded by a labyrinth of folded space-time. Your ships can't navigate it. Your weapons can't target through it. Your empire is effectively quarantined." Virax's scales had gone completely pale. "You could have used this technology to destroy us at any time." "Yes," Chen agreed, "but that's not how humanity works. We don't want to destroy the Dominion. We want you to understand something fundamental about our species." The AI's form shifted again, displaying scenes from human history. Humanity has faced extinction-level events multiple times. Climate change, nuclear war, biological weapons. Each time, they adapted, evolved, turned their greatest challenges into stepping stones for advancement. "When you threatened our colonies," Chen continued, "you didn't force us to become warriors. You forced us to innovate, to push the boundaries of what your scientists claimed was impossible. This isn't a show of force. It's a demonstration of human nature." The council chamber had fallen completely silent. Even General Vextor's demands for action had ceased. Commander Xelthar stepped forward, his bioluminescence pulsing with a mix of vindication and sadness. "I tried to tell you. Humans don't think like us. They don't fight like us. They turn their weaknesses into strengths, their limitations into advantages. The quantum maze will remain in place, Chen announced, until we've concluded peace negotiations. You have 12 hours to decide. Adapt to a galaxy where humanity is your equal or remain trapped within the maze of your own assumptions. As the transmission ended, Virax turned to face her council. The most powerful beings in known space sat in stunned silence, their certainty and Dominion superiority shattered beyond repair. "Get me Commander Xelfar's full report from the First Contact War," she ordered quietly. "Every detail he tried to warn us about. Every observation we dismissed." She looked around the chamber, meeting each counselor's eyes. "It's time we learned who humanity really is." One standard month after Operation Thunderstrike, the crystalline spires of the Dominion's Grand Council chamber witnessed something unprecedented. A human delegation walking its hallowed halls. Commander Xelfar watched from his advisory position as Admiral Chen approached the central podium, her AI partner Atlas manifesting beside her as a shimmer of conscious light. The chamber had changed. Where once stood symbols of Dominion supremacy, now hung representations of various species, including a holographic Earth rotating peacefully among the others. It was Virax's idea, a visible reminder of their new reality. "The terms of the Quantum Concordat are simple," Chen began, her voice carrying easily through the hushed chamber. "The Dominion recognizes humanity's sovereign territory, including all current colonies and future expansion zones. In return, we'll share our quantum tunneling technology and AI partnership protocols." Virax leaned forward, her scales now bearing the subtle markings of humility, a recent modification many council members had adopted. "And the quantum maze will be dissolved once the treaty is ratified," Atlas answered, its digital form rippling. "Though we'll maintain the underlying network as a peacekeeping measure. Think of it as a mutual insurance policy." A low murmur ran through the assembled delegates. Not protest, Xelfar noted, but acceptance. Amazing how quickly perspectives could change when faced with undeniable evidence of one's limitations. "There is one additional matter," Chen continued, producing a small quantum crystal. "During our occupation of your networks, we discovered something interesting." "Admiral Kylov, would you care to explain?" The cybernetic admiral's hologram flickered to life, his artificial eyes dimmed with what might have been shame. We found signs of other species, Chancellor. Civilizations on the edge of space-faring capability that we had marked for future conquest. Races we planned to subjugate, just as we attempted with humanity. 17 species, Atlas specified, projecting their images above the council table. Each unique, each with potential, each marked in your databases as future acquisitions. Virax's inner eyelids flickered rapidly. "And I suppose humanity objects to this." "On the contrary," Chen smiled. "We have a proposal. The Quantum Concordat includes a provision for a joint mentorship program. Humanity and the Dominion, working together to guide these emerging civilizations, not as conquerors, but as teachers." Xelfar's bioluminescence pulsed with surprise. This was not the vengeful response he had expected from a species that had been attacked unprovoked. "You would trust us with this?" Virax asked, genuine confusion in her voice. "After what we attempted." "Trust is earned," Atlas responded. "And this is your opportunity to earn it. Besides, we believe the combination of Dominion experience and human innovation could create something remarkable." Chen nodded. "Your empire spent millennia perfecting certain technologies. We spent centuries learning to think outside conventional boundaries. Imagine what we could accomplish together." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. It wasn't just a peace treaty being offered. It was a complete paradigm shift. A chance to become something more than conquerors. "There is one condition," Chen added, her tone growing serious. "Commander Xelfar will oversee the program." All eyes turned to the scared veteran. His bioluminescence flickered with emotion as Chen continued. "You understood us when no one else did," she said. "You tried to prevent a war because you saw not just our capability for violence, but our potential for innovation. That's the kind of wisdom these emerging species will need. Virac stood, her ceremonial robes catching the light. Commander, what say you? Zelthar stepped forward, looking at the assembled images of the 17 species. He saw in them what he had seen in humanity years ago: potential, waiting to be nurtured rather than exploited. I accept, he said simply, though I have one question for our human allies. He turned to Chen and Atlas. You could have destroyed us, dismantled our empire. Why offer partnership instead? Atlas's form shifted, displaying scenes of human history. Because humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our adaptability, the AI explained. It's our ability to turn enemies into allies, to learn from our mistakes, and help others do the same. Every time humanity faced extinction, Chen added, we survived not by destroying our challenges, but by understanding them, by finding ways to grow beyond them. She smiled. Consider this the Dominion's opportunity to do the same. As the council chamber erupted in discussion, Zelthar felt his bioluminescence settle into a pattern of deep blue, acceptance and hope. The Dominion had sought to conquer humanity and had instead been offered a chance at evolution. They had underestimated humans in every possible way, not just their capacity for defense, but their capacity for forgiveness, their ability to see beyond victory to something more profound, genuine change. The stars above the council chamber seemed brighter somehow, as if reflecting the dawn of a new era. An era where the price of underestimation had been paid not in destruction, but in transformation. And somewhere in the quantum networks that now connected their civilizations, human and AI minds were already working together, preparing to welcome new species to a galaxy that had finally learned to value potential over power.